make sure you create a personal reality within this existential plane using everything that I've just explained to get to your goal, which is your desired outcome. A lot of people die never uncovering their true potential. I was definitely almost one of those people. So today my mission has become making sure that as many people uncover their true potential as possible. Now, I've talked about this principle of being able to create a reality or create a vision for yourself that you can walk into a purpose. Today we're going to be explaining how that is possible. So firstly, you have to understand that you exist here in this world as an individual. And for you to understand the principle of existence, let's go back to the 1800s and let me introduce you to a philosopher called Descartes. Descartes was a French philosopher who spoke about the principle of dualism. And the principle of dualism was how he thought that existence was experience. So your experience on this universe was two things, mind and matter. I'm sure you've heard of the saying mind over matter, and that's where it comes from. So you have a mind, and matter is the universe which we operate in. Your mind and your emotions make up how you see and you interpret reality, but external factors can influence that, such as your parents, the environment you grew up in, what school you went to, and things like that, because they start to shape your beliefs, which then in turn shape your personality, which then shapes how you interact with the world. So it shapes your belief, which then shapes your habits, which then shape your identity, which then shapes your personality. Right. So they believe that this is how reality is experienced. So in terms of the beliefs that you hold will form the habits that you have, which will form the identity that you hold, and that gives you a personality. These two are almost interchangeable, and your external circumstances play a lot to all these factors. So this principle of thought and emotion creating reality was touched on by Joe Dispenza, who's a chiropractor who broke his back, healed it himself, and then decided, hey, I'm going to teach people that you don't have to settle for something which you've been told cannot change. So his theory is that brain and heart coherence shape what you see in reality, which is partially correct, and we'll go on to why. So you see that you exist in this plane of reality. This is your reality here, and this is the matter, the things that make up reality. So very tiny atoms, which then make up the things that you see around you. So table, chair, all of the things, and our interactions itself as human beings. Now, that being said, what is the thing that predisposes these things? What created these things? Because, as I said, Descartes thought, well, if I say I am, I'm not referring to my head, my hands, my body. And Bob Proctor touched on this when he said in one of his interviews, when you excuse yourself for coming late to a meeting, you don't say my body is late, or my hands are late, or my legs are late. You say I am late. And if you didn't have an arm or a leg missing, you would still say I am. So it's like, which is the I? So the I doesn't cease to exist when the body stops to exist. So the principle that we're trying to explain is that I am, the person who you are, goes beyond your physicality. And beyond that is essentially your consciousness or your spirit. For those of you that believe there's a creator, and for those of you that don't, you better start believing. Because here's the thing. The principles of the universe are too exact for it to have been an accident, right? For example, if the moon was 1 degree to the left or to the right, and that would change the gravitational constants, which would mean that the tides of the waves would be too high for life on Earth to be permissible. So because everything is exact to such a finite figure, gravitational constants, that's just one of the influences. Is the people who have studied the universe have said everything is so aligned that one mistake could have meant the difference between existence and not. Therefore, highlighting the principle of a creator. Every philosopher who's pondered upon this has said there's something which predisposes what we have. Now, let me tell you about creation from a biblical perspective. You see, in Genesis, it tells you that you are created in God's image. Now, God is the creator of the universe. And a lot of people misconstrue this statement when you're being told you're created in the creator's image. They think, hey, does that mean God has an arm and he has legs? And well, no. If you are created in the same image as a creator, and we've broken down these things that make up you and taken it back all the way to the spirit, it means you resemble him in your consciousness. So your consciousness resembles the creator. Someone asked me the other day, what is the purpose of God? What is the purpose of a creator? And after pondering it for a while, I realized it's quite simple. A creator is there to create. So who creates the creator? It's like no one. God is ineffable. Here's the thing, right? I'll explain it because I'm talking from a Christian and biblical perspective, but I'm a science guy. I've studied science as well. I had an argument with my physics tutor because he was into metaphysics and all of these things one time in class. And I've since researched this topic, and I've come across an answer which I wish I had at the time to ask him, because I don't think he would have had an answer. But here goes. When we talk about things that we understand, I always say this thing that God does and science explains. Science is the human's language that we've put to extraordinariness to try and comprehend it with our physical minds. But here's the thing, that's putting a limitation on things, because the very fact that we can understand it means we're very far from the truth, because again, like I said, God is ineffable. But going back to the answer which I was talking about is the fact that a lot of people refer to energy a lot and vibe and all of these things, right? So if we go back to physical and chemical theory, you know that energy cannot be created nor destroyed, but it can be transformed from one form to another. And that's true with any form of energy: heat, electricity, light, and so on and so forth. Well, here's the thing. Your spirit, your consciousness is a form of energy because it radiates. Have you ever met someone and you're like, that person seems a bit shady, I don't know, that person has a bad vibe, I don't know, I just don't like them. You have no explanation, but it's like the vibe was off, as they call it. So that's the principle of energy. Energy radiates, and it can be boiled down to neurophysiology, where it's someone in close proximity to you is able to detect your emotions. And I'm sure you've walked into a room and felt the vibe was off. That's because we're constantly firing and we're constantly radiating energy. So let's take it back to the principle of the consciousness. We know that energy cannot be created nor destroyed, but it can be transformed from one function or the other. So why is it so difficult to accept that there is something external from us that exists in the form of energy that cannot be created nor destroyed, but can be transformed from one form to another? Principle of God explained. Simple. For those of you that always argue there's no creator. Here's the thing. Whether you like it or not, you can choose to ignore this, right? We can cut off this part, but there's certain principles that exist within here, and you ignore them at your own peril, because you exist in a universe that you argue there's no creator for. But whether there is or there's not, there's certain rules and regulations that if you don't abide by, you'll pay the consequences of the reality that you experience. And we'll go on to that. So now let's revisit the principle of having a creator, who we are created in its image. If you're created in something's image, that means therefore the capabilities that that thing has, you are therefore going to embody. So if God's primary purpose is to create, then a creation that he's created in his image is therefore going to be able to do what? To create as well. So because you're created in God's image as a creator, let's put an antenna on your head, because let's just say that's how you create reality. Because you have to remember, this is just a vessel which we use to experience the physical plane. And that's quite simple and straightforward, right? So it's like we said previously, you exist independent of your body. So that's why when somebody dies, we don't come in the room and say, oh, hey, that is Paul, for example. But yeah, Paul's just died, Paul's in there. You say, Paul's just died, his body is in there. You no longer refer to his vessel as Paul. To you, something just doesn't make sense because he's no longer there. So which means he's vacated his vessel, which means you recognize, even within your words that you say and your acknowledgement, even though you don't consciously acknowledge it, you acknowledge the fact that the energy has ceased to exist within this vessel. So therefore that is no longer the person. That being said, when you are animated and you are alive and your consciousness exists there, because you resemble God in his consciousness and his spirit, you have the ability to be able to create certain things within this confined space. Hence the things that we talked about, you having control over. And you see, we live in a world. I'm going to try to draw a world, guys. Please do not judge me. Oh my God. That's not bad, right? Thanks for not responding. Anyway, so we live in a world, and this world here, I'm going to expand it. Whatever I show you here is what goes on in the world. We're going to label this PR, which is the plane of reality. There's multiple layers to it, but we won't go into it. That's another video. In here, we're talking about this plane of reality where we exist. So existence happens on this plane. So when Descartes talked about mind and matter, he was referring to your mind, which is within your body, and the matter exists here. We've gone on further to learn that there's other factors which contribute to the reality that we experience. But here's the thing, right? Because you are a creator and you can create your existence in this plane of reality, you can create both good and bad things, whether consciously or unconsciously, right? And even tells you, even the creator himself created everything, both good and evil. And it tells you that. When I say it, I mean the Bible. There's other philosophical books and other religious books that will tell you similar principles, and they vary a little bit, but everyone thinks unanimously towards the same thing. It's just a synopsis. A synopsis is something given in different accounts, but all boiling down to a central aspect of, right. So now that being said, how you perceive reality is a perception. It's a fugazi. It's not actually there. I know I'm saying that it's not actually there whilst we literally see it in front of us. But guys, sometimes seeing is not really believing. And that's why you can believe and therefore see something else. That's why two people are able to have the same experience and have different realities, which means different translations of the experience. Now that you're here, let's inject you into a reality. If you have limiting beliefs, then therefore you are going to have negative attributes, which means your creation is more likely going to be negative. And here's the thing, and why we have this kind of waterfall method going on here, is the fact that if this is corrupt, this tends to be corrupt, which makes this corrupt, which makes the whole thing corrupt. So therefore, if you have positive beliefs, positive habits, a positive identity, and a positive personality, you're more likely to create a positive reality. And vice versa, if you have negative beliefs, which forms negative habits, which form a negative identity and a negative personality, you are likely to have a negative reality, which is a life which you don't like. You wake up in the morning, you think, oh my God, I'm stuck in this cycle again. I don't know what to do to break out of it, and so on and so forth, which is essentially living in fear, but that's another video. Here's the thing, however, whatever you believe that then forms all of these things comes from your brain and your heart coherence, right? And Joe Dispenza touched on that. And the reason why I said he was partially right was because his method is ignoring one important factor. If you have a brain and a heart, the Bible tells you above all things guide your heart. And it's interesting because your brain is the command center, but it tells you to guide your heart. And it tells you to guard your heart because your heart is very important. Why? Because your emotions can poison your thought. And then you have a negative flow, a negative cycle that's going on, which creates negativity and all of these things. Here's something though. The vessel which you actually operate with can affect these two things, right? Because we already know that external factors can affect it as well. Your immediate environment can affect these things. And this is why people will tell you, if you want to change yourself, change your environment and you'll experience change. Again, that's partially true because there's so many factors that go into it that if you want to maximize your chance of being able to change, you need to max out all of this, right? So how does your body influence your brain and your heart coherence? Let me give you an analogy. Think of these two things as your engine. I'm going to attempt to draw an engine. Please do not laugh. Damn, this is a very weird engine. Not bad. And you have a vehicle. Right. So you have an engine and you have a vehicle. Your engine is your brain and your heart. And your vehicle is your body. Notice something here. You could have the best performing engine right here. And you put it into a beat down car. You're not crossing the finish line. Because you have to understand, life is a race, and you've heard that, the rat race, all types of race, people in competition with each other, even though they don't want to accept it. But it's a race towards a desired outcome and a race against time, right? So you need to make sure you optimize these two things. And a lot of people they hire coaches, they go to seminars, they do all of these positive affirmation talks and everything. And that's okay for a while because you optimize your brain and heart coherence, which is able to generate positive belief, but you cannot sustain it because you have not optimized a third factor and a fourth factor. As I said, there's multiple factors to this, right? So coaching, affirmations, all of that, they have a place, but it's all not woo stuff, but it's not being used properly, and that's why people are not able to sustain it. So you pay £2,000, $3,000 for this retreat that lasts 2 weeks. You're like, yes, my life is finally going to change, only to find yourself a month later thinking, what happened? And then you're overcome by the shame, like, oh, I spent all that money and all of these things, and my life hasn't really changed. It's because, yes, it did change, you boosted it, but you did not create sustenance. So back to this analogy, If you have a performance engine and you put it in a Ford Fiesta, that is not going to be able to handle its capabilities. And vice versa. If you have a performance car, optimal body, shredded, abs, everything, and you then put an engine below capacity of the performance car, it's not going to perform, again leading you to losing the race. So therefore, you have to understand that you could have the best engine, but someone who has a moderate engine, a moderate car, is going to beat you in the race, which is why perfectionism is not so good. And that's something that I've always struggled with. But anyway, right, I want to draw another thing to your attention and why your vessel, your car, is important, which is fuel, right? And with some of our clients, what we do is we work on their diet because it's important. People think diet is not important in terms of your existence and your thoughts, but as I said, as I've already shown you, all of these things are interconnected. So let's say each car has a specific fuel or type of fuel, let's just say, which is more accurate, that you need to put in the car. For those of you who drive, you know what happens when you put a diesel in a petrol and petrol in diesel, right? It's the same thing for people's body. And let me dive into that a little bit. Have you ever heard of the saying, oh, skip breakfast, you'll become more productive in the day, intermittent fasting is really good for your brain and all of that. And other people say, oh no, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Make sure you eat breakfast. It will do you a world of good. Those statements are both true. Why? They're both true simultaneously because it depends on the individual, the car you're putting it in. As you know, you've got hybrid cars that take both electricity and petrol, right? Same way, your body is very unique in its sense. You need to know what kind of body and what kind of metabolism you're running, because what we found with studies is people's glucose varies at different rates throughout the day, right? Which depends on how their metabolism is primed. So when we used continuous glucose monitors to study some of our participants, what we found was the fact that some people skipping breakfast is optimal for them because there's this line which you have to maintain with your glucose in order to sustain performance through brain heart coherence. If you wake up in the morning and you're already ticking along this line, having breakfast spikes your glucose, and a glucose spikes means poor decision making, slow down brain, negative thoughts, which creates a negative belief throughout that day, which means you think, oh, I'm only going to do half my work today, which means, oh, I'm a person who did half the work today, and sustained over time, that becomes your personality. And if external factors are also against you, boom. Right. So that being said, there are some people who wake up and they are down here. Contrastly to those people, they need a breakfast to be able to get themselves back on this line that they're treading. You don't know that until you study your biology, until you find out which side of the line you actually fall. Right. So we've explained that the principle of the fuel which you put in the car affects the performance, because car and engine, you could have the best car and the best engine, you put the wrong fuel inside, kaput. Done. You're out of the race. Right. So now that we've explained how this triad that we have here creates your reality, let's look at how you can actually extrapolate that into real time. So most people wake up without a vision for their life. They wake up, it's the same as when you go to the gym. When you go to the gym, if you just walk in, and I know some people that do this, and if you go to the gym and you do this, you will know. They walk in there, so what should I hit today? I fancy a bit of legs. Or I fancy a bit of shoulders. Cool, I've done that. And then no plan, no direction. They don't know where they're headed. So how do you know that you hit your target for that day? How do you know that you didn't smash your target for that day or you worked below it? You do not know. Why? You didn't have a plan. That's why personal trainers exist. Do you need a personal trainer to go to the gym? No, you don't. Some people who overfixate on the process itself don't actually get to the action, which is why you could have the best personal trainer, have the best routine, have the best everything. You're studying the equipment and someone just walks in, you know what? I don't know how to do this gym thing, but I know I have an upper body and a lower body. I'll split train both and I'll just do a bunch of running and eat well. They've literally simplified what personal training is, and they've essentially made a personal plan for themselves, which I want to say makes them a personal trainer, but some of you are going to shoot me. But anyway, they personally trained themselves. Are they a personal trainer? I don't know. But anyway, let's move on. So you need to have a plan and you need to have a vision, because the Bible tells you, again, I reference the Bible a lot because I'm Christian. So I respect everyone's belief, no matter what you believe in, but Christian principles can be extrapolated into real time, into your existence in this plane of reality. And here's the thing, and I always tell Christians, right? These laws that have been given in this plane of existence, let's call them laws of reality, right? Whether you choose to recognize them or not recognize them, you are under them, right? They literally govern how reality operates. So you see people who aren't Christian, they don't subscribe to any religion at all, and they're very successful in life, and people are like, oh, what does that mean? Oh, money is the root of all evil. And it's like, no, it's not. God doesn't actually want you to be poor, right? You're just ignoring the laws that these people are more than likely using without knowing that they're using, because they either learned it from someone else or they picked it up as they went along life. And we won't get into this, but essentially like I said, without a vision you perish. One of them is having a vision, which is make sure you journal, make sure that you have a plan for your life, make sure you know, like, want to get somewhere in X amount of time, because otherwise you're just a feather in the wind and you will end up somewhere where you don't want to be, right? So that's just one of the laws. There's many. So that being said, let's go back to having a vision. As I said, we live in the world, and I've basically expanded it here. And you need to understand that in this world, as human beings, we're all individuals. Think of us as one node within a network, right? We're all interconnected. And because we're all interconnected, it means the action of one node can significantly influence multiple nodes within a certain, I'm not going to say geographical location or time, because time is an illusion. And a lot of people say this but don't actually explain why time is an illusion. I'll give you a demonstration of why time is an illusion. Remember when I said earlier that we've conditioned our minds to be able to condense reality so that it fits our mind frame of how we see things. So basically, we've simplified it. But simplification means limitation. It's because we've created the principle of the past, the present, and the future. But when you think about it, only the present exists, because the past is just you remembering what happened moments ago, and you can fractionate it down to now. So it's like, a second ago, I was saying a different word, and closer to that, I was saying a different word. Closer to that, I'm talking now, and literally, I said now a couple of seconds ago. That might be a lot, but it's like, essentially, it's just the past is a constant repetition of the present. And then when we talk about the future, remember when we said you can vision because you're a creator? When you imagine, oh, I'm gonna go towards the kitchen, I'm gonna grab a glass of water, that's the thought. It's not existed. If you don't go, it hasn't happened. So you have to physically then go, I'm taking one step, that's now. I'm taking another step, that's now. Wait, look, that's the past. And I'm walking towards the future, which doesn't exist, but you've created it depending on what you want to do. Which brings us back to this principle of what do you want to do with your life? So you need to first define it. Once you've defined it, you enter the game and you are a node within the network. And the reason why I say we're all interconnected, whether you like it or not, is, remember I talked about vibration, energy, having your neurophysiology being picked up by someone in close proximity. We're all interconnected, which means what one person does can have a ripple effect. What people did in history many years ago, we're experiencing now. Sorry, I lost my train of thought because I was thinking of something that I wanted to explain here. Remember when I said the time is an illusion, which means, again, in the Christian principle, when God says, pray for something and you are going to have it, and faith without work is dead, it means that when you pray for something, you need to be convicted that you already have it, because you have the power to be able to create that thing for yourself. So therefore, if you think of something, thank God, which you're an extension of, that, hey, I've got the capabilities to be able to achieve this thing, and then go forth and take action. And here's why people pray and they never see any results. I'm just having flashbacks, sorry. Growing up and being in different churches, you see all types of churches, right? What you call the prayer warriors, right? They will pray and they can move mountains with their prayers. But here's the thing. There was this video, right, that was circulating online and it went viral. Essentially, the pastor was, he had an assistant hold out a bottle of water and he said, water, come into my mouth. I command you, come into my mouth. And obviously nothing happened, right? And he went over and he took the water and he drank it. If God has given you the capabilities to be able to do something, no matter how much you pray about it, your prayers are going to fall on deaf ears, because it's like you're praying for something which is with. So we took a little recess because we ran out of battery and it died, and I didn't listen when I was told the battery was going to die. But anyway, we're talking about the gentleman, this pastor who said water come into my mouth, and then he took it and he drank it because he has the capabilities of being able to do so. Now, I was talking about prayer warriors, and I said no matter how much you pray for your reality to change, because you have the capabilities and the cadence to change your reality, God is not going to come and change it for you, because he created you in his image as a creator to go forth and create. Moving on. As I said, you are a node within this network and we are all interconnected. I'm not going to draw the dots because it's going to mess it up, but you are one aspect that makes up this whole existence, and we all make it up, whether the people who came before, whether the people who are here now, whether the people who are here in the future, because as I said, time doesn't exist and we're all interconnected. You see in studies of neurophysiology, you see in religious theories, you see in all forms of religion, because we're essentially one person fragmented into different pieces, right? So that's why the principle of do unto others what you want done unto you is because you're literally doing it to yourself. And that's why people have this principle of karma. Anyway, that being said, let's talk about your vision and what you want out of your life. A lot of us want to end up here, which is the goal. So once you've defined a vision for your life, it will somehow look like you want success, right? What does success mean? Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Success is in the eye of the visionary. And I'm not talking about physical eyes. Check it, clock it. Anyway, so success, they usually fall within certain criteria. I made a short about this: health, wealth, relationships, and I'll add my personal one, which I think everyone should have, but not everyone subscribes to this. But as I said, the laws which you choose to ignore or accept are laws acting on you, whether you like it or not. So you need to have a goal for your spirituality. And what does spirituality look like? Well, for a Christian, it looks like your relationship to God. For an atheist, it looks like your relationship to yourself. For other people, cue explanation. So it's essentially your spirituality is how connected are you to the source, because if you're able to draw the laws and understanding of the source, which means you understand also yourself, you're able to influence all of these things in real time. And I said time is an illusion, so now to then be able to create something on this plane of reality. And here's another reason why time is an illusion. You know, when people pray for something and they're like, oh my God, I need this thing to happen. I need it to happen now. And it's like, the more you need it to happen now, the longer it's going to take, because you're taking micro action against the fact that you don't believe that it's going to happen. Time is an illusion. So whether it happens in 10 days, in 10 years, in 10 weeks, it was always going to happen. You can't put a time frame on it because you don't understand the complex spindle of existence enough to know actually when all the factors are going to align for that thing to happen. You just need to believe that it's going to happen, and you have absolute conviction that it's going to happen, therefore it's already yours. Where we heard that before. Essentially, you can't put a time frame on things, right? Because what you think you understand, and I'm saying this, I'm laughing because it's from experience, right? When you set a vision, a goal, a purpose for yourself in order to become successful, once you enter this place here, which some people call the matrix, you'll realize how many factors are truly against you. Murphy's law is going to come after you, right? And I'm not saying that just because it's a fact. Everything that will go wrong, because it is there to test you, right? To see that you need to come and experience this reality which you've created for yourself, but you cannot do so under the same identity. So therefore, in order to create your desired reality, you need to kill your old identity. This identity is not going to die easily. It's a battle, it's a challenge. So once you step into the arena, what's going to happen is that this is going to get tested. You're going to get put through the flame. And there's a biblical principle about this. I'm not going to quote it because I don't know how to quote the guys. I'm just a normal guy that's trying to learn the Bible, that's trying to just go through life, and I'm teaching you the lessons that I've learned, right? But there's this verse in the Bible that says, God sits like the refiner and the purifier of silver. If you study people who refine silver, they literally have to sit there and hold the silver in order to purify it. And what do they hold it in? They hold it in hot flames. They hold it in, think of heat, think of a volcano type heat for silver to be purified, right? It's a process. So when the verse says God sits there as the refiner and the purifier of silver, another thing that the purifier of silver does is he sits there and he watches. He has to watch the silver, right? And how do they know when the silver is purified? It's going to be shiny enough. How so? It's going to become so shiny that they can see their reflection. They can see their image in it. You are created in whose image? When he wants to purify you, change your identity, put you through the fire because you want to go through to a certain destination that you want to get to, he's going to put you through trials and tribulations that are literally going to change your identity to remind you of who you are in his image. That's a bar. Sorry. Drop the mic. This is how you need to create your reality. Let me show you why it's important for you to be intentional about it. You exist here, you're this node. And remember, as I said, if you wake up to go to the kitchen, you could turn left and go to the bedroom. You could be pressed and go to the toilet instead. The doorbell could go and then you go to attend to the postman. That's to show you that when you start with an intention, that intention can become derailed. There's multiple avenues which you could go down, but this is where you want to end up. A game came to my head. I don't know what that game is, but oh yeah, the maze. You know, you had to draw those lines and then you find where you need to go to the exit right here. There's a specific path that you need to take in order to get to your desired reality. And the reason why I say you need to be so intentional and so focused is because there's so many other paths that you could go down that if you're not intentional about where you want to go, the statistic probability of you ending up where you want to be very slim. In order to maximize that statistic probability, you need to maximize these things and play the rules of the game. Because also, that being said, I know I said there's a specific path for you to get there, but because you derail yourself, you can still find yourself back onto that path. And how do you do so? You refocus. It's not going to be easy. There are many times where I'm like, oh, I'm going to give up on this goal that I had. And I'm like, oh damn, this goal is important to me. I can't give up on it. And then I've got back. So I've been derailed and then I've come back. And that's why you hear all these successful people, what they'll tell you is, and when we say success, I might stand here, but to some people I'm successful, to some people I'm not successful. Remember, as I said, success is in the eye of the beholder. I'm successful to the people that look and they'll be like, oh, you've achieved a lot of great things in your career and your finance, and I want to be like you. The people who've done more than me, they're like, that guy's still just starting out. And because I'm here, I focus and I'll look at those people and be like, oh damn, I wish what that person has. Which is bad. Thou shalt not covet. Because why should you not covet? And here's the thing, at school I would always get in trouble because when someone says something, I ask, but why? And the teachers would be like, can you just shut up and do as you're told? Like, nah, ADHD, bro. But if you ask yourself why, you always uncover the importance of things. So thou shalt not covet. Why? Because, well, number one, jealousy. Jealousy stalls you. And number two, when you covet someone by looking at their journey and it's an unfair comparison because they did not have the same challenges or the same unfair advantages that you have. So it's a distraction. Coveting is a distraction. So don't look at other people and say like, oh, that person's doing great, or I wish I was like that person, or oh, I wonder what that person had, because it breeds jealousy and it distracts you from your goals. You are in a race, yes, but the trick is it's not against other people. You make it about other people. It's literally just a race against time. Because if you have been given a life, and people say life is a gift, and if that gift is from your creator, then your gift back to the creator should be what you do with that life. So you're literally in a race with yourself. Who are you racing? The you from 5 seconds ago, the you from 10 years ago, the you from... So every step which is a betterment in yourself is a step in the right direction. So as I said, because it's a fine line, success is a fine line, the statistic probability of you falling upon that fine line by just it happening is very slim. And that's why only, they say 1%, I don't know if it's 1%, they've named them the 1% of the world, but I don't know the exact percentage, but let's just say the 1%. That's why out of 100% of people, only 1% make it thus far, because a lot of people give up on the way, they die on the way. Many things happen to discourage them from getting here. That's why very few people get here. And that's why it's so worth it. And that's why people are like, oh, I want to get to this place, because that's the goal. Again, if life is a gift that you have been given, then your gift to the person who gave you is what you do with it. Make sure you create a personal reality within this existential plane using everything that I've just explained to get to your goal, which is your desired outcome. What does that look like? It's actually limitless. You can do whatever you want. We're just all bound by limitations, and depending on how strong that limitation is, defines how far we will get. And some people may not even make it that far. But as long as you made it better than you did 5 years ago, yesterday, it's all a plus. So stay wise and optimize.